The warning nobody took seriously until it was too late. What if I told you the biggest story of the NBA Finals wasn't the Knicks leading the series, but a 22-year-old kid who warned the entire basketball world exactly what he was about to do? Most players avoid pressure. Most players dodge expectation. Most players hide behind safe answers like, I'm just focused on helping my team win. Victor Wembanyama did the exact opposite. Before the 2026 NBA playoffs even began, he looked directly into the cameras and essentially said, I should be the MVP. By the end of the season, there shouldn't even be a debate. Not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not Nikola Jokic, not Jaylen Brown, him. At the time, people rolled their eyes. Critics called it arrogance. Fans thought the young superstar from San Antonio had finally let the hype get to his head. After all, who walks into a league filled with champions, Hall of Fame caliber players, and former MVPs, and publicly announces that everyone else is chasing him? But Wemby wasn't talking. He was sending a warning. And what happened next forced the entire NBA to listen, because this wasn't empty confidence. This wasn't manufactured drama. This wasn't social media bravado. Victor Wembanyama backed up every single word. The San Antonio Spurs kept winning. The numbers became impossible to ignore. The blocks, the rebounds, the game-saving plays, the dominance on both ends of the floor. Night after night, the kid everyone called the alien kept proving that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't overconfident at all. Maybe the rest of the basketball world had simply underestimated him. Then came the moment nobody saw coming. Stephen A. Smith, the loudest voice in NBA media, a lifelong New York Knicks fan. A man who built an entire career arguing against players, challenging narratives, and refusing to back down from a debate. Even he couldn't fight it anymore. After watching Wembanyama dismantle opponents and carry San Antonio all the way to the NBA Finals, Stephen A. looked into the camera and admitted something almost unthinkable. Damn it. He changed my mind. For Knicks fans, it was shocking. For NBA fans, it was historic, because when the man who spent years defending New York starts defending a San Antonio superstar instead, you're witnessing something different. You're watching the beginning of a new era. But here's the crazy part. The story wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about pressure, adversity, expectation, a young man carrying the hopes of an entire franchise while trying to prove he belonged among legends. And before this journey reaches Madison Square Garden, before the finals chaos, before the tears, controversy, and unforgettable moments that would divide the basketball world, you need to understand exactly how Victor Wembanyama became the player crazy enough to call his own shot, and talented enough to make everyone believe him. If you're watching from New York, San Antonio, Paris, Los Angeles, Manila, London, Sydney, or anywhere else in the world, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And here's today's question. If you believe Wemby is already the future face of the NBA, comment 1 below. If you think it's still too early and he has more to prove, comment 2. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications, because this story is only getting started. And trust me, what happened next changed everything. The boy they called the alien. Before Victor Wembanyama became the nightmare standing between the Knicks and a championship, he was a skinny kid from Le Chesnay, just outside Paris, growing up in a house where sports were not entertainment. Sports were the language. His mother understood basketball. His father understood movement, balance, and discipline. His sister played the game too, so Victor was never introduced to competition like it was something special. He was born around it. At first, basketball was not even the only path. He played soccer as a goalkeeper. He practiced judo. He learned footwork, body control, patience, and timing before he ever became a global basketball obsession. Then the height came, and once the height came, the questions followed. How does someone that tall move like that? How does a kid with that wingspan handle the ball like a guard? How does a player who looks like he should only protect the rim suddenly step outside, shoot threes, push the break, and bend the entire court around him? That was when people started calling him the alien. Not because it sounded cool, because there was no normal basketball category for him. By 10 years old, he was already being watched. By 15, he was playing professionally. Scouts did not need long to understand what they were seeing. This was not just another tall prospect. This was not another big man who needed years to develop basic coordination. Victor had imagination. He saw angles other players could not see. He blocked shots without jumping early. He passed over defenses like he was reading from above the court. And even when his body was still catching up, the talent was impossible to hide. But that is what made the story dangerous. Because when the world calls you special before you become strong enough to carry the label, pressure can destroy you. For Wemby, it did the opposite. It sharpened him. Every stage in France became another test. Every injury became another lesson. Every doubt became another quiet note stored away for later. And years later, when he looked into those cameras and said the MVP debate should be over, that confidence did not appear from nowhere. It had been built slowly. In gyms nobody in America was watching. In practices where he was still just a kid. In a country waiting to see if its most unusual basketball talent could become something the NBA had never seen before, the night San Antonio found its future. By the time Victor Wembanyama arrived in Las Vegas for those exhibition games against G League Ignite, the secret was already leaking out. NBA scouts knew, executives knew, hardcore basketball fans knew, but America had not fully felt it yet. Then Wemby stepped onto the floor and turned curiosity into panic. One game, 37 points, another game, 36. But it was not just the scoring, it was the way he scored. Pull-up threes from impossible release points, blocks that looked unfair, drives that made no sense for a player his size, possessions where he looked like a center, wing, guard, and safety all at once. Suddenly, every rebuilding team in the NBA understood the same terrifying truth. This was not a draft prospect. This was a franchise earthquake. The San Antonio Spurs won the right to choose first in 2023, and when Adam Silver said Victor's name, the emotion finally broke through. Wemby held the jersey, his family cried, his sister cried, and Victor, the kid who had carried this dream since childhood, let the tears fall. It was not weakness, it was release. Because the dream had become real, but the burden had become real too. San Antonio was not just drafting a player. They were drafting the next chapter of a franchise that once had Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and Greg Popovich's entire culture of patience and discipline behind it that mattered. Because Wemby did not land in chaos. He landed in a place that understood greatness does not need to scream every day. It needs structure. It needs habits. It needs a locker room that can protect a young superstar from becoming a headline before becoming a leader. And still, the expectations were impossible. People called him the best prospect since LeBron James. Some said he could change basketball forever. Others warned that his body might not hold up. Every game would be inspected. Every miss would be clipped. Every stumble would become proof for skeptics who wanted to say the hype was too much. But from the first moment, Wemby carried himself like someone who knew the attention was not a punishment. It was the price of the future he had asked for. And San Antonio was ready to build around him. The rookie season that broke the rules, most rookies get forgiven for being confused. Victor Wembanyama did not get that luxury. Every arena treated him like an event. Fans arrived early just to watch warm-ups. Opposing players tested him. Veterans bumped him. Guards tried to drag him into space. Big men tried to prove he was too thin to survive in the paint. And for a while, the Spurs lost a lot. That gave critics a window. They said the highlights were nice, but winning mattered. They said he was talented, but not ready. They said the NBA was too physical, too fast, too unforgiving for a young big man built like no one else. Then the numbers started stacking up. 21 points, 10 rebounds, more than 3 blocks a night. A rookie leading the entire league in blocks. A rookie making defensive possessions feel unsafe for grown NBA scorers. Players stopped attacking the rim the same way. They looked over their shoulder, they hesitated, they rushed shots they normally made. That is the kind of impact that does not always show up in a box score, but every coach in the league can feel it. Then came the historic markers. Unanimous Rookie of the Year. All defensive first team. A season with a combination of points, blocks, and made threes the league had never seen before. At that point, the conversation changed. This was no longer about whether the hype was real. It became about how high the ceiling actually was. Because Wemby was not just surviving the league. He was already bending it. And the scariest part was obvious. He was still learning. His handle could get tighter. His body could get stronger. His reads could get faster. His stamina could improve. His chemistry with San Antonio could grow. That meant the rookie version, the one already making history, was not the finished product. It was the introduction. The NBA had seen dominant centers before. It had seen elite defenders. It had seen 7-footers who could shoot, but it had never seen this exact combination wrapped inside a player who spoke calmly, studied deeply, and seemed almost offended by the idea of being satisfied too early. By the end of year one thing was clear. The alien had landed, and the league had no manual for stopping him. The scare that could have changed everything. Then came the moment no highlight reel can prepare you for. Victor Wembanyama was rising. The Spurs were building. The league was watching. Every month seemed to bring another sign that his future was arriving faster than expected. Then his season stopped. A blood clot in his right shoulder. Suddenly, basketball felt small. This was not a twisted ankle, not a sore knee, not a normal injury fans debate on sports shows. A blood clot is serious. It does not care about draft status, endorsements, awards, or potential. For a brief moment, the entire basketball world had to ask the question nobody wanted to say too loudly. What if this story changes forever? The Spurs shut him down. The playoffs disappeared. The dream paused. And for a player who had spent his whole life chasing the highest level of the game, forced stillness became its own kind of test. That is where Victor's response mattered. He did not turn the situation into a public drama. He did not beg for sympathy. He did not build an excuse machine around himself. He stepped back. He recovered. He studied. He reflected. And when he returned, he carried the experience differently. There are players who come back from a scare trying to prove they are the same. Wemby came back looking like he had learned he could not afford to be the same. He needed a stronger body, a calmer mind, a deeper understanding of pressure. So he trained not just like an athlete, but like someone preparing for a long war. He worked on focus, he explored mindfulness, he studied movement and control. He treated his mind like part of his game, not some separate thing you only discuss after failure. That is what made the next version of him more dangerous. Before the scare, Wemby was a phenomenon. After it, he became more serious. The smile was still there, the creativity was still there, but underneath it was something heavier. The awareness that nothing is guaranteed. And when a player that talented starts treating every season like it could define his legacy, the league has a problem, because now he was not just gifted, he was urgent. The Spurs stopped rebuilding. The 2025-26 season did not feel like another developmental year. It felt like San Antonio had finally decided the waiting period was over. The Spurs added help. De'Aaron Fox gave them speed, shot creation, and pressure on the rim. Dylan Harper brought another young weapon into the system. The roster around Wemby no longer looked like a classroom. It looked like a threat, and Wemby understood the shift immediately. This was not about promising flashes anymore. This was not about moral victories. This was not about being competitive for 3 quarters and learning from the 4th. The Spurs wanted to win, and Victor wanted more than that. He wanted the league to know San Antonio had arrived early. Night after night, the numbers became brutal. He protected the rim like a locked gate. He scored with more control. He punished mismatches. He made defenses choose between giving him space outside or getting swallowed near the basket. Neither option felt safe. The Spurs kept climbing in the West, and as the wins piled up, the tone around Wemby changed again. Analysts who once spoke about his potential now spoke about his present. Coaches started building entire game plans around making him uncomfortable. Opposing stars knew that if they wanted a clean look at the rim, they had to solve him first. Most could not. That is why his MVP comments hit so hard. When Wemby said defense was half the game and deserved more respect, he was not making a cute argument. He was challenging the way the league measures value. Because if one player can erase layups, change passing lanes, force bad shots, rebound, score 25 a night, and still stretch the floor, how do you compare that to a normal superstar? You do not. You admit the conversation has changed. That was the uncomfortable truth Stephen A. Smith eventually had to face. Wemby was not asking people to imagine greatness anymore. He was putting it in front of them every night. And once San Antonio turned into a 62-win machine, the old doubts started to sound outdated. The rebuild was dead. The Spurs were hunting, and the alien was no longer coming. He was already here. The MVP claim that shook the room. When Victor Wembanyama said he should be leading the MVP race, it sounded reckless to some people. But the more you listened, the more dangerous his argument became. He was not saying it because he wanted attention. He was saying it because the evidence was sitting right there. The Spurs were winning. His defensive impact was unmatched. His offensive numbers were elite. His presence changed the geometry of every game. And when San Antonio faced Oklahoma City, the defending champions, the Spurs had already proven they could beat them. That is why the comment landed like a threat. Wemby was not just talking about an award. He was telling the league that the playoffs would confirm what the regular season had already revealed. That is the kind of confidence fans love when it comes from an established champion, and fear when it comes from someone young enough to still be called the future. Because if he was right, then the future had arrived before anyone was ready. Stephen A. Smith heard it. Everyone heard it. And the natural reaction was to push back. You do not just walk past Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You do not dismiss Nikola Jokic. You do not casually place yourself above proven killers and expect the basketball world to nod along. But Wemby was not asking for permission. He was forcing a trial. The court would decide, the playoffs would decide, every possession would decide, and once the postseason began, that confidence became the emotional engine of the entire Spurs run. Every block felt like proof. Every road win felt like proof. Every time he got knocked down and came back stronger, it felt like the argument was writing itself. The scary thing about Wembanyama is not that he believes he is great. Plenty of players believe that. The scary thing is that his belief seems tied to preparation, not ego. He studies, he adjusts, he absorbs pressure, and when things become uncomfortable, he does not look surprised. He looks like he expected the test. That is what made the MVP declaration so powerful. It was not a prediction. It was a challenge. And once the league accepted that challenge, Victor Wembanyama started answering in the only language that matters in the NBA. Winning, the playoffs turned him into a monster. The playoffs do not care about potential. They expose everything: weakness, fear, bad habits, poor conditioning, immaturity. Every secret eventually gets dragged into the light. For Victor Wembanyama, the 2026 playoffs became the place where the NBA learned he was not just built for highlights. He was built for pressure. The Minnesota series brought the first real storm. The Timberwolves hit him, crowded him, leaned on him, and tried to make every catch uncomfortable. Then came the controversial moment with Naz Reid, the elbow, the review, and the ejection. For the first time, Wemby looked human, frustrated, overwhelmed. Caught in the kind of physical chaos that defines playoff basketball, the Spurs lost that game, and the series suddenly felt dangerous. But the response told the real story. He came back with force: 27 points, 17 rebounds, a vin, no long speech, no collapse, no hiding, just a reminder that mistakes can either break young stars or sharpen them. Then came Oklahoma City, the defending champions, the team Wemby had been referencing all season. This was no longer theory. This was the real exam. The series was intense, physical, controversial, and emotionally draining. The Spurs fell behind. The pressure grew. Wemby even skipped media after one painful loss, a rare crack in the calm image people had attached to him. But again, the response mattered more than the stumble. San Antonio won Game 6, then Game 7 on the road against the defending champions. When the final buzzer sounded, Wemby did not pretend to be cool. He broke down on the court. He cried openly. He hugged teammates. He embraced his father. He let the world see how badly he wanted it. That moment mattered because it shattered the cold alien image. Victor was not emotional. He was consumed. The same player who calmly called his shot before the playoffs was now crying because the shot was becoming real. He had dragged the Spurs into the NBA Finals. He had taken down the champion. He had turned bold words into a Western Conference title. And waiting on the other side was New York. The biggest stage, the loudest crowd, the harshest spotlight, and the one city ready to test whether the alien could still breathe when Madison Square Garden tried to swallow him whole. New York tried to break him. The Knicks did not enter the finals trying to admire Victor Wembanyama. They entered trying to exhaust him. That was the plan. Run him, hit him, bump him, make him defend guards, protect the rim, fight for rebounds, create offense, and carry San Antonio for 40-plus minutes a night. New York understood something simple. You might not stop Wemby, but maybe you can drain him. And for parts of the series, it worked. His first quarters looked dominant. His fourth quarters looked heavier. The legs were not always there. The jumpers got shorter. The decisions got harder. OG Anunoby leaned into him. Karl Anthony Towns made him feel every possession inside. Josh Hart brought constant pressure and contact. Madison Square Garden smelled blood. Still, Wemby kept producing. 28-10 in his first final. For almost any player in the world, that would be a dream. For Victor, people called it a difficult series. That alone tells you how absurd the standard had become. Then came Game 4. San Antonio built a 29-point lead. The Garden went quiet. Wemby looked like he was about to rip the series back into balance with both hands. Then the Knicks came back, possession by possession, stop by stop, bucket by bucket, until the impossible became real. New York won 107-106, the largest comeback in NBA Finals history. The Spurs were stunned, Wemby was exhausted, and the Knicks led the series 3-1, but the night was not finished. Outside the Spurs hotel, fans gathered. The noise turned ugly. Then, something crossed the line. An egg was thrown near Wembanyama, creating a viral moment that had nothing to do with competition and everything to do with disrespect. Stephen A. Smith saw it and did something many Knicks fans did not expect. He defended Wemby. He called the behavior disgusting. He said San Antonio showed class and New York owed the same respect. The most famous Knicks supporter in sports media was forced to protect the rival superstar. That was the real twist. New York tried to break Wemby. Instead, the city exposed how powerful his presence had become. Because even in a losing series, exhausted and targeted, Victor Wembanyama still controlled the conversation. The message was bigger than basketball. By the time the finals reached this point, the scoreboard told one story. The Knicks were ahead. The Spurs were in trouble. New York had found a strategy that worked. Speed the game up, make Victor Wembanyama run, force him to carry too much for too long, and trust exhaustion to become the final defender. From a basketball standpoint, it was smart. Cruel, physical, relentless, but smart. That is playoff strategy. You attack the opponent's greatest strength until it becomes a burden. You make the superstar feel every inch of the floor. You do not beat legends by respecting their comfort zone. But this story was never only about whether San Antonio could win the 2026 NBA Finals. It was about what Wemby revealed while being tested. He revealed that confidence without work is noise, but confidence backed by preparation can shake an entire league. He revealed that defense can still define greatness in an NBA obsessed with scoring. He revealed that a young superstar does not need to respond to every insult, every crowd, every viral moment, or every act of disrespect with anger. Sometimes the strongest answer is composure. That is the human lesson in this story. Pressure does not always create character. Sometimes it reveals what was already there. When Wemby called his shot, people heard arrogance. When he backed it up, they heard truth. When he cried after beating OKC, they saw passion. When he stayed calm after the hotel incident, they saw maturity. And when Stephen A. Smith, the loudest Knicks fan in media, had no choice but to defend him, the message became undeniable. Victor Wembanyama had arrived, not as a perfect player, not as a finished champion, but as a force the NBA must now build its future around. For the Spurs, the lesson is strategic. Protect him, support him, manage his workload, and keep building a roster that allows his greatness to breathe. For the Knicks, the lesson is respect, compete hard, play physical, but never let passion become ugliness. For fans, the lesson is even bigger. Greatness should be challenged, not disrespected. Rivalries should be intense, not hateful. Basketball is at its best when emotion, competition, and respect can exist in the same arena. Wemby sent the Knicks a warning, then he sent proof. And whether San Antonio wins this series or not, the NBA has already received the message. The alien is not waiting for tomorrow. He is building his castle right now. If you believe Victor Wembanyama will win an NBA championship soon, comment 1 below. If you think the Knicks exposed the blueprint to stop him, comment 2. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with another NBA fan, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story, because the Wemby era has only just begun.